thing about bourbon guys, though, is I feel like it might be less about alcoholism and more about like status, right? Like because I think up until a few years ago, bourbon was the world's third most expensive liquid behind crude oil and printer ink. So it's like a lot of it has to do with like, chasing these status symbols and stuff like that. I mentioned Van Winkle earlier. Like the Van Winkles are sort of like, the big dogs of the bourbon world. Like the most sought after bourbon in the world is Pappy Van Winkle, and it comes in several different iterations. But like
now, the patriarch of that family, that's Rip.
Fucking.
Oh, dude, I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm like telling us real information.
That is actually their tenure is called Old Rip Van Winkle, and it's on the label. It says asleep many years in the wood, and he's there with the beard and everything.
Oh yeah, okay.
I did.
So my joke didn't even work, basically.
So yes, Chris, yes.
I did look up Pappy Van Winkle the other day when I decided I was going to do this, and if you look it up on that website Google, you will find like, okay, so Old Rip Van Winkle 10-year 107 proof bourbon whiskey cost on Caskers.com $986.99. Like that's how much that one is. And then and I'm learning that some of this shit is also fake. Like that people fake some of these things. I was figuring, Tom, you have to have heard of somebody faking.
Oh yeah, you could get so I live in Lexington, Kentucky, which is like not necessarily the epicenter, but it's very close. I would say Louisville and on down the road a little bit is probably the epicenter, but there's like distilleries within a stone's throw from where I live. And so there's all these like bourbon meetup groups. And so now the thing that's happened in the last couple of years since like the proliferation of like all the popularity of the bourbons and everything is like scammers. So you got bourbon scammers now that will sometimes they'll figure out how to they'll get like a Van Winkle bottle, for example, and fill it up with something that's close, like Weller. Like Weller is famously like very close to Van Winkle because it comes from the same fucking barrel, but it's way cheaper.
And there's no way you would know. I hear about these guys. I read about these guys, and I gotta tell, there's no fucking way. It's like if in my hobby, which I'm embarrassed to say now on a show about bourbon, Legos. Like if I ordered Legos on the internet, I feel like you guys are laughing at me. If I ordered Legos on the internet and they came, I wouldn't know if they were different or not. And I can guarantee these guys don't know the difference between like.
Are you tasting your Lego? I don't think that's necessarily it, But I understand what you're saying. Yeah, that I would think that if it comes from the same barrel, now call me crazy. So then what is the difference in those two? Why is one significantly more expensive?
Literally no difference. The difference is how long it stays in the barrel.
Okay.
Also, the other thing is a lot of people think that Van Winkle bourbon is just made in like Van Winkle barrels and it's this and that and the third. It's not. It's called Julian Van Winkle goes to Buffalo Trace Distillery and he dips his little cup in a couple of barrels that fit their what they call the flavor profile or the mash bill. Sometimes they'll call it the mash bill. Like,
oh yeah.
These specifications, and it's whatever he likes is what becomes Van Winkle, and whatever he doesn't like becomes Weller.
I see. So it's the same. So it's a distillery that just those two though. Just those two companies get their bourbon from there. Because I'm so ignorant.
No, it's a ton of different brands.
Tons of different brands getting it from the same
barrels. Yeah,
same barrels, and then so it's just a matter of how long it sits after that, or how long it's been sitting before that, or
how long. Yeah, just how long it's been aged overall. Well, so, like for example, if you have a 15-year whiskey. He'll go to the 15-year barrels and see what, you know what I'm saying? Like, okay, this is going to be Van Winkle this year or whatever.
That's so silly.
Yeah, it's totally on the whims of what one guy likes on a particular day. And this is what these guys are like taking out second mortgages on their house to impress their poker.
They
buddies.
must love him so much. Like, do these guys like idolize?
Oh,
that guy?
he's a god, dude. He's a god. And then the funny thing about Julian Van Winkle is I really like Julian Van Winkle. He's really fucking cool because he kind of like heckles the nerds a little bit. Like he goes out of his way to tell people you don't need Van Winkle bourbon. I drink Maker's Mark at home. Like,
well, that's what I'm reading. I'm reading like on Caskers, they have reviews, and I'm looking at right now the reviews for Van Winkle Special Reserve Lot B 12-year-old bourbon whiskey. And I'm reading this guy who says, "What an utter waste of money, time, and hype. Very mediocre bourbon, all hype, no value. Lot B is a $60 bourbon at best, and that's being kind." And then the next one is
hold on a second. I gotta say something. The funny thing about that is Lot B was like a $40 bourbon, but these fucking nerds drove up the market so much that now it is that. So yeah, you're right, but it's people like you that why you have to pay that price.
It's funny to think about like it's funny to think about this guy, right? His name's Whiskey Glass. Be warned, these Van Winkles are just okay. They're good, but there's far better or comparable drams out there for far less money.
Well, what are the streets
I don't know
saying?
what
What are the streets saying then? What are the streets saying is the actual best, a high-end whiskey? Or is there any consensus on that? Is it just sort of a matter of
it's definitely Van Winkle, Chris. It's 100% like the thing that they're looking for. So when you go to these sites where they buy the old like that last one I just read that was a bad review, $1,111.99. So you picture that guy putting $1,111.99 on his credit card, getting it like shipped to his house, putting it down, pouring it into a glass, drinking it, and being like, that should have been $40. And it fucking makes me laugh every time.
Yeah, he's just like, yeah, that's not great. But his money's gone.
I fucking love it.